My name is Michelle, I'm 30 years old. I got married 2 years ago and am currently enjoying a dual income, no kids lifestyle with my husband. That's what it seems like on the surface, but in reality, we've been struggling with infertility since we got married, and we've finally started undergoing fertility treatments. Despite my husband's frequent business trips, we're trying our best to start a new family together. Today, my sister, who reached out to me saying you must be bored, right, during my husband's business trip this weekend, and I managed to get a reservation at a high-end restaurant that's hard to book.
Are we okay here? Don't we stick out?
I whisper to my sister sitting across from me in the semi-private room. It's fine, you'd be surprised how many regular employees come here.
If you say so. But how did you manage to get us in?
My husband's got connections here. He heard they had a cancellation, so he suggested I take you. Your husband is such a sweetheart. Being the son of a big corporation's executive really makes a difference in kindness and everything else.
Hey, that's too much teasing.
Oh, sorry. As my sister and I were whispering, we overheard voices from the next booth.
To the new addition to our family, cheers! Next time, let's come with our baby, too.
The voices were clear enough to be heard on our side, and to my shock, I recognized my husband's voice. Listening intently, there was no mistaking it, it was indeed my husband's voice. Hey, isn't Isaac supposed to be on a business trip today? He said he wouldn't be back until the weekend.
Yeah, that's what I heard too. So, he lied to Michelle?
It seems so, given the reality we're facing.
Michelle, are you okay?
What do you mean?
I mean, the conversation we just overheard.
Well, if you're asking if I'm okay, I'm not.
And it was quite. I mean, really shocking content, wasn't it?
Yeah, something about a new family and a baby.
I heard it too. What's going on?
My sister and I looked at each other, unable to hide our confusion. The cheerful voices from the next booth continued, oblivious to our turmoil. I can't believe there's such a wonderful man at my workplace. I'm incredibly lucky. Feel the same way. To think a kind and feminine woman like Mina would approach me. I was over the moon.
Isaac, you're not old at all.
Well, to someone in their early 20s, a guy over 30 and married might seem old, right? I never once thought of you as old, Isaac. From the moment we met, I thought you were incredible. I couldn't believe someone like you would be interested in me. I've always thought you're cute since the first time I saw you.
Really?
Yeah. Even more than your wife?
Of course.
Your wife, she's really beautiful, you know.
Yeah,
have you seen a picture? Yeah.
Well, sure, she looks good. But a woman with such a strong, dominating pride, there's no comfort in that. Mina, you're much cuter. I'm glad. And above all, you're carrying my child. There's nothing happier than that.
You didn't want a child with your wife?
Not really.
The thought of raising a child with her is just depressing.
Really?
Absolutely. Seriously. Mina, you're gonna stay home after we get married, right?
Of course.
I have to take care of the home for the person I love and our child. That's right. I always wanted a woman to stay home and take care of the family. That's impossible with my wife. In that sense, it's great Mina is pregnant with my child. Couldn't have a child with her, and that turned out for the best. But your wife, she's been going to fertility treatments, right? Yeah, for over a year now, and still nothing. No chance there. So, you're gonna be with me? Make me your wife? Mina, are you sure about this?
Huh?
You're okay with someone like me? There isn't someone else, is there?
No. There's no one else. All I can think about is you, Isaac. So please, make me your wife soon?
I'll try to make it happen as soon as possible. I'll use infertility as a reason to ask for a divorce from her.
Really? You're serious?
Do you think I'd lie?
I couldn't imagine that. So, I'm really going to become Isaac's wife?
Of course. I'll start moving on it as soon as I can, so wait for me. Okay, I'll be waiting, with our baby.
I'm really looking forward to it. Wonder if it's a boy. A girl?
We don't know the gender yet. Maybe we'll find out next month if it's early. I'm really looking forward to it. Never thought I'd become a dad so soon after meeting Mina. Maybe we're really compatible? What, you mean like that kind of compatibility? What do you mean that kind of? Well, if you say that kind, it's that kind. The adorable, smitten Mina I get to see, that kind.
No way. Stop it. We're eating.
But you like it, don't you?
Well, yes, but...
Listening quietly with my sister, we couldn't help but were uncomfortable expressions as we were subjected to their vividly inappropriate affair revelations.
Michelle, are you really okay?
What do you mean?
What do I mean? The content is too much to bear listening to.
I'm okay. At this point, after hearing all that, I've moved past sadness to disdain and anger. That makes sense. And look here. I pointed towards the window at the side of the semi-private room. Huh? Since it's a semi-private room, the wall by the window isn't completely sealed. So, I placed a voice recorder there.
What? Why do you have that?
I went to a lecture for work a while back, brought it to record the speech to make a report. It was a long lecture, so I thought I'd miss something. Wow, that's some solid work, high-pride wife. Shut it. It's better to have pride than not, right? Well, yeah. If that's how he wants to play it, I'm playing it that way too. Now that it's come to this, I'll see it through to the end. Got it, I'll help too. Huh? I can help, right? In many ways. Yeah, you're right. I can't just stand by while my sister gets treated like that by such a jerk. Thanks. Anyway, as irritating as the voices next door are, let's eat for now as a form of perseverance. Ah, a rallying meal, then.
Right. Look, the dish is here. Yay, let's dig in.
Truth be told, I was shocked. There have been ups and downs, but to find out my husband was cheating. Yet, beyond the shock, I let the overwhelming emotions take over, and for now, indulged in the exquisite meal.
Delicious. Indeed. They ordered the best course for us here, let's enjoy it. Your husband is really nice.
As we ate, I pondered. Now, what to do? That expression must have been clear to my sister sitting across from me. We both grinned and simultaneously brought it to our mouths. A month later, the day finally came. I'm home. My husband's faint voice could be heard as he stepped into the living room from the entrance. Welcome back. What's wrong? Huh? Did something happen? You get it? Well, yeah. Actually, I got transferred.
What? Transferred?
Yeah, it's sudden but...
Where to?
Huh?
Where are you being transferred to?
Alaska.
Alaska? They have a sales department there?
Oh, no, as a salesperson at the branch. Wait, is this a demotion? My husband, who had been nervous from the start, shook his shoulders and darted his eyes around at my question. I couldn't help but burst into laughter, unable to stop.
You. Why are you laughing? Your husband is being sent away to the sticks. How can you laugh so much?
Because it's too funny. Demoted because of an affair scandal.
What?
What?
Did you just say affair?
I did. You were demoted to the sticks because of your affair. I'm not wrong, am I? The look on my husband's face, as if he was hearing broken Japanese, made me burst into laughter again. Oh, hilarious. Stop making that face like a pigeon hit by a pea shooter.
But, how do
I know you've been having an affair with a worker?
What?
Mina, your company's worker, right? Oh, should I say was? She got fired because of the affair.
How do you know that?
Accused of infidelity and you don't even bother with an excuse to your wife.
Oh,
Well, any excuse now would just be pathetic.
why?
Huh?
Why do you even know about the affair, let alone her name?
It seemed like my husband's brain couldn't keep up with the overload of information. His eyes were darting around. Reluctantly, or rather, with a bit of glee, I decided to reveal a little bit at a time. Yeah. We happened to be at the place. Celebrating with you guys.
Huh?
Didn't notice? Next to your semi-private room. My sister and I were eating.
What? Seriously?
My brother-in-law made a reservation for his lonely sister-in-law during my husband's weekend trip. Unlike some husbands sneaking around with another woman. My husband turned away, his face sour as if he had bitten into a bitter bug. While we're at it, why don't you call her here too? I'll reveal it bit by bit.
How could I do that?
You don't have a choice, do you?
What?
There's something you need to tell me, right? Seemingly grasping something from my words, my husband reluctantly took out his smartphone and started contacting the woman. 30 minutes later, the doorbell echoed in the silent living room. My husband checked the monitor and unlocked the entrance's auto-lock. She's pretty familiar with this place, huh?
What?
She came as if it's natural, without even needing the address.
Yeah.
Well, I knew that.
Huh?
The monitor has a recording function.
Oh.
Every time, coming in so confidently, I was shocked. With a look of exasperation, my husband awkwardly avoids my gaze. The doorbell rang just then, and he hurried to answer it. Soon, my husband returned to the living room, the woman in tow, both wearing awkward expressions. Nice to meet you, I'm Michelle. I greeted the woman with a bright smile and a nod. She bowed her head in return, but her smile was so forced it was unnatural. No need to pretend to be something you're not.
What?
You think you're more suited to be his wife than I am, don't you? Right, Mina? The woman, now making the same stunned face as my husband had earlier, froze in front of me. The ridiculousness of the situation made me burst into laughter once more.
What are you laughing at? What do you mean no need to pretend?
Sorry. It's just too funny how you two are reacting exactly as I expected.
Expected what?
Exactly as expected. Sneaking around, thinking you're being discreet with your sleazy affairs, but actually, everyone knows except you two.
What?
Otherwise, you wouldn't be demoted because of an affair, right?
Demoted? What are you talking about?
What? You didn't know? This guy got demoted because of the affair scandal.
What? Isaac said it was a transfer.
Well, technically it is a transfer, but, come on, you should understand. You were fired because of the affair, right? Then it's obvious the same consequences would apply to him. Did you also tell her it was just a transfer to cover up the demotion?
So what if I did?
That's lame. My husband, looking guilty, turned away, while the woman, her face flushed with anger, seemed not only young but also lacking in thought in many ways, now taking my words at face value and lashing out simplistically.
So what? Isaac just didn't want to worry me by saying it. I'm gonna be Isaac's new wife. And since I'm going to be a wife, I can quit my job without any worries. You're just upset about that, aren't you?
I remember something like that. Planning to become a housewife supporting your loving husband, right? Can I just check something? Listen to this. What I showed them was a voice recorder.
What's this?
This is, well, a precious collection of your commemorative days conversations.
What?
Look, you went to that fancy place, right? Your very important conversations from that day. I'd like to hear it again if you don't mind, okay? Saying that, I placed the voice recorder in front of the two, frozen in place. Pressing play, the conversation from that day started to play. Mina will stay home after we get married, right?
Of course. I have to protect the home for the person I love and our child.
That's right. I always wanted a woman to stay at home and take care of the family. Impossible with my wife. In that sense, It's great Mina is pregnant with my child. Couldn't have a child with her, and that turned out for the best. But your wife has been going to fertility treatments, right? Yeah, for over a year now, and still nothing. No chance there.
So, you're gonna be with me? Make me your wife?
Are you sure about this, Mina? What? Are you okay with someone like me? There isn't someone else, is there?
No. There's no one else. All I can think about is you, Isaac. So please, make me your wife soon.
I'll try to make it happen as soon as possible. I'll use infertility as a reason to ask for a divorce from her.
Really? You're serious?
Do you think I'd lie?
I couldn't imagine that. So, I'm really going to become Isaac's wife?
Of course. I'll start moving on it as soon as I can, so wait for me.
Okay, I'll be waiting with our baby. Ah, I'm really looking forward to it. Wonder if it's a boy. A girl?
We don't know the gender yet. Maybe we'll find out next month if it's early? Glancing at the two, now pale from hearing their own conversation, I paused the voice recorder. So, did you find out the gender?
What?
The gender, you know. You said maybe next month you'd know. It's been a month since then, so I wondered if you found out.
It's a girl.
Wow. Good for you, Isaac. A cute little girl. You always said you wanted a girl, right?
Well, yeah.
So, what are you gonna do?
What do you mean?
What about us?
That is.
You mentioned divorce on that recorder, right?
What?
Oh, right. You also said this, didn't you? I turned the voice recorder back on, fast-forwarding to the relevant conversation. What if your wife resists the divorce? What? Because your wife has no clue, right? She's still trying with the fertility treatments. Well, she can live on her own. She's the type of woman who can work hard and survive without a child. Wow, she's trying hard for a child, you don't know her true feelings. If we've tried this much and can't have a child, it means she doesn't need one. And you, Isaac? I need one, that's why Mina and I are having a child.
So it was fate for Isaac and me to have a baby together?
Yeah, which means she and I weren't meant to be. No matter what she says or does, divorce is already decided. But
don't worry. Even if it means giving up all my assets, I'll definitely get a divorce.
So, I'll be taking all the assets then, thank you very much.
What?
You said it yourself, willing to give up everything for a divorce. You want a divorce that badly, right? Especially for such a selfish reason. So, you'll listen to my side, won't you? With that, my divorce from my husband was surprisingly straightforward. I had him sign the divorce papers, which I had already filled out my part of, and proceeded with a lawyer. Later on, our divorce was finalized. Afterward, my husband, or rather my ex-husband, was immediately transferred to Alaska. With the assets I received from the divorce, I bought one-room apartment near my parents' home. From time to time, my sister or my parents would visit, and friends would come over for meals or to stay the night. My new life was more fulfilling than I had imagined, not being tied down by anything. About a month after the divorce, I got a call from my ex-husband. Hello? What's up?
What's up? Do you even realize what you've done?
Huh?
You snitched about my affair to the company. I know you've been scheming against me.
He was yelling from the start. I put the phone on speaker and continued the conversation. Scheming?
You told the company about my affair. That's why I got transferred to Alaska. You're the worst.
Huh? Is that what the company told you?
Like the company would say that to me.
Then why are you saying I snitched?
Some colleagues who came to our wedding saw you visiting the company. Otherwise, there's no reason for you to come to my company.
Huh, so I was seen.
I'll never forgive you. I'm gonna sue you.
Go ahead and sue if you think you can. While it's true I visited your company, I didn't snitch.
What? Don't play dumb.
I'm not playing dumb. I was called to your company by the HR manager.
What? You were called to the company?
Yes. By your company's HR manager.
Huh?
Oh, didn't you know? Your company's HR manager is my sister's husband.
What? Your sister's husband?
Oh, you were too busy having an affair to notice the company announcements, huh? Caught off guard, my ex-husband went silent. I couldn't help but smirk at his reaction. I told you, we went to that place because of my brother-in-law's consideration. Then, my sister would report it to him, right? Everything that happened, in detail.
Huh?
For my sister, seeing her beloved sister hurt by her husband's affair was painful. She reported it while crying. Then my brother-in-law got angry. He was dispatched by the parent company's president for correction of corporate compliance. Actually, my brother-in-law's family owns a well-known major corporation. And my husband's company is one of their group companies. My sister talked to my brother-in-law about me, and he took charge of my husband's punishment.
Corporate compliance correction?
Yep. There were already rumors about shady employees in your company.
What?
Such things seriously undermine corporate order, don't they? It's a nuisance to other employees. And now, with your actions? My brother-in-law, as a representative of the owner company, couldn't let it slide. So, he called me, who had the evidence, to the company.
Evidence?
The voice recorder. It had everything, including you sneaking women into hotel rooms during business trips.
You played that for him?
He asked me to. I couldn't refuse.
That's a violation of privacy.
Huh? Talking about legal violations when you're the one who broke the law first?
What?
Adultery is a tort under civil law. I don't have to take anything you say seriously.
Screw you and your entire family.
Even saying that about my brother-in-law?
Of course. Calling an outsider like you to listen to recordings, that's not treating an employee properly. After all the hard work I've put in like a corporate slave. And then to be demoted to Alaska because of an affair, seriously, screw this.
That's right.
Huh?
Never thought the employee you defended would say such things, right?
Hey, you don't mean…
My ex-husband must have sensed the atmosphere through the phone. He was trying to gauge the situation with hesitant words. Hey there, Isaac. It's been a while since that time.
What, HR manager?
It's unfortunate our reunion has to be under these circumstances. I never thought I'd be told off by you like this.
What? No. It was just a joke. A joke. The sudden transfer to Alaska had me stressed, and I was just venting to her, who I thought would understand.
So, the stress brought out your true feelings? Is that it?
What?
People tend to reveal their true selves when they're cornered. I guess what you said earlier was your true feelings. Don't worry, I've taken it all in.
What? No.
But it's a shame. It seems my efforts didn't reach you at all.
What efforts?
That's right. On top of disrupting the company's morals with your affair, sneaking someone into a hotel during a business trip, using work trips as an excuse to go to hotels, and even engaging in inappropriate activities in the company's storage room and emergency stairs, huh?
What?
As long as there are people aware of it, denying the affair was difficult, but I managed to somewhat obscure the specific incidents and settled it with a transfer. It could have been a case for dismissal, but your brother-in-law helped arrange a transfer instead. If it was so tough that you were stressed, wouldn't dismissal have been better?
No. I never wished for dismissal.
But hey, what did you say to the HR manager just now?
That was… I never thought the manager would be there. Being dismissed is worse than hell. I've given up all my assets in the divorce, and she quit her job, so there's no income.
Sounds tough.
Right? So then…
But you knew that from the start, didn't you?
What?
You're the one who said you'd give me all your assets. We agreed on that after the transfer was decided. Complaining about it now doesn't really hold up, does it?
That's true, but…
The situation has changed a bit.
What? What do you mean?
Actually, your shady actions caught on the security cameras have been leaked by someone from another department.
What?
Initially, that wasn't our department's jurisdiction, and those videos are stored for a certain period. Once recorded, there's no telling when or how it could leak.
You said you'd take care of it, didn't you?
Come on, you think I have that kind of power? As my brother-in-law explained, the hidden matters were eventually exposed by someone else. Well, it was impossible to keep it hidden forever. He had barely managed to avoid dismissal, but it seems the consequences of their actions were destined to catch up with them.
So,
the company is reconsidering your punishment due to the unsuitable actions.
What? You're kidding, right?
Well, after all you've done, what goes around comes around. If you make others unhappy, it comes back to you. You've got to clean up your own mess.
That's...
So, are we done here?
What?
From now on, our ties are completely cut, so live happily with that woman you love so much. Goodbye. I could hear yelling from the other side of the phone, but it no longer mattered to me. With those final words, I ended years of connection. A few days later, I heard from my sister about my ex-husband's disciplinary dismissal. Basically, he was fired, huh? Well, yes. After doing all that shady stuff in the company and causing trouble. Really? That happened? It seems so. Apparently, that woman was two-timing my ex with another man in the company.
What?
Yeah, and it caused quite a stir in the company. He was too distracted by her to focus on his work. So, that's why he was taking her to hotels during business trips and outings? Maybe. Well, she seems to be the source of the trouble. Double timing, huh? No, not just that. What? She's been a temp worker for a while, but when she was a full-time employee, she got involved in an affair with her boss, got snitched on by his wife, and was fired. Since then, she's been hopping from one company to another, always causing male-related troubles. Really? Yeah. My husband got curious and looked into her. He was shocked that his brother-in-law got caught up with such a woman. I'm really sorry. Please apologize to your husband for me. No, Michelle, you did nothing wrong. It was good riddance to that jerk, in the end. Well, yeah. But it's stupid to lose so much over a woman who was playing two-timing games. Indeed. And if she was two-timing, that means the child might not even be his. Oh. Indeed. When I got tested during the fertility treatments, I was told I had no issues. Seriously, that could be a possibility. Well, whatever it is, it's not my problem anymore. In the end, it was my ex-husband who chose a woman like that, so it's his responsibility. Getting divorced from such a man might have been a lucky break for me. Right. You've become quite the catch since the divorce, Michelle. I wonder why. I heard divorced women are popular, but I never thought I'd be in such a situation. Still, be careful. There are definitely men who think a divorced woman is desperate. More than just a few, it feels like they're all just after one thing.
No way! If Michelle gets hurt again, I'd seriously cry.
That's true. My sister cried more than I did over this whole mess. I've always been close to my sister, but this incident brought us even closer. It made me realize how comforting and empowering it is to have someone who cries for you and stands by you.
Don't worry, next time I'll choose someone who makes you feel truly at ease. Really, do that. Oh. That reminds me. I've got a great guy in mind.
What?
Do you remember Nick?
Well, yeah. He's my ex-boyfriend from high school and college.
You loved him so much. You broke up because he was assigned overseas. Stop it, will you?
Suddenly being reminded of my ex-boyfriend is embarrassingly awkward. Why bring up Nick all of a sudden? As I puzzled over this, she mentioned, he's back, came back last week.
What?
He's working at the headquarters here now. I ran into him at the station. He was asking about you. What? Nick said his contact hasn't changed. Why don't you give him a call? With a grin, my sister seemed interested, but I was more caught up in the current whereabouts of Nick. Our young love ended because we couldn't handle a long-distance relationship when he was assigned overseas. I had carried feelings for him for years. Now adults, the urge to talk to him again pushed me to glance at the smartphone on the table. I guess it's time for me to head home.
Yeah. You got this, Michelle.
Sensing the mood, my sister waved goodbye with a smile and left. As the door closed with a thud, I searched for a familiar name on my phone, my heart racing. Taking a deep breath, I dialed the number of someone I hadn't called in years.
I'm not cold, leave me alone. I won't hand this child over to someone bad like you.
On the evening when a major cold wave was reported on the news, I was hurrying home. That's when I happened to spot my niece, but something about her seemed off. For some reason, she wasn't wearing her coat, just carrying it in her arms. Looking closer at what she was holding, I was shocked to see it was a baby. Moreover, both my niece and the baby looked unusually thin and their clothes were dirty.
In this cold, where are you going with a baby?
Unable to ignore my shivering niece, I offered to let her rest at my house for a bit. As soon as she saw me, she snapped at me angrily.
Shut up. Who says I'm going to your house?
I have a bad relationship with my sister, and her daughter, my niece, dislikes me as well. Still, her rejection was stronger than I expected, which took me aback. But under the cold sky, I felt it was dangerous to leave my niece and the baby alone. Trying to sound as gentle as possible and smiling, I invited my niece to my house, but she firmly refused.
Mom said to never trust you. You're a good-for-nothing.
My niece wouldn't take my hand, ignoring everything I said, and kept resisting with her faltering body. What should I do? How can I help them? While I was internally panicking but still trying to persuade my niece, a car unexpectedly pulled up right beside us. Shocked at what might be happening next, I was astonished to see my husband stepping out of the car. Well, no choice then, I'll have to take her by force. He simply said, and before we knew it, he swiftly picked up my niece, baby and all, and quickly placed them inside the car. Hurry up and get in, he urged me, and as I scrambled into the passenger seat, he started the car somewhat roughly. I protested his forceful action, akin to a kidnapping, but he drove on without a word. The place we eventually arrived at left me breathless. My name is Maple. I'm a typical 29-year-old housewife, born and raised in an ordinary family and married to an ordinary man. I have an older sister by 2 years. I don't recall our relationship being particularly bad during our childhood. Though we had our fights occasionally, we also played together, just an average pair of siblings. However, after becoming adults and getting married, my sister changed. The man she married was what you would call wealthy. He drove a luxury car, wore high-end watches, and was always dressed in stylish suits. Influenced by her husband's values, my sister's spending became extravagant after getting married. She started buying high-end clothes and accessories one after another, and even for daily groceries, she would only shop at upscale supermarkets. Not only that, but she began to look down on me and our parents, calling us poverty-stricken. Moreover, my sister and her husband lived in the town next to ours, and she would boast about her house at every opportunity, which honestly got annoying. Ah, living in an apartment is something only poor people do, how pitiful. If you had married a rich man like I did, you could have lived in a spacious and beautiful house like mine. This house is super comfortable, well worth the $1 million we spent on it. Every time we met, my sister would flaunt her wealth, and my irritation grew until one day I finally snapped.
Enough. Always talking about money, it's so annoying. I'm happy with my house and my life. Stop interfering.
As I screamed at her, red-faced and nearly lunging forward, she snorted and laughed. Oh, you must be jealous, aren't you? Oh no, the jealousy of the poor is so unseemly. Seeing my sister looking down and mocking me, I came to despise her deeply in my heart. Following that incident, My sister's snide remarks escalated. Even at family gatherings at our parents' house, she would deliberately mock me and my husband.
Is that all your husband makes? So little, he must be an incompetent regular employee.
Oh, is that why you have to work part-time? Wow, that's sad.
Your wedding was really cheap, wasn't it? It was almost all family there. In contrast, look at ours. Our ceremony was lavish. We had 100 guests, and the dress, venue, and food were all top-notch. If only you could have married up like I did.
My greedy sister even tried to take my necklace once. It was the only branded item I owned, a treasure gifted by my husband for my birthday. But it seemed my sister couldn't stand me owning a brand item.
How dare a poor person like you wear branded goods? Actually, it doesn't suit you at all, it's a pity for the necklace. It would look much better on me, so hand it over.
In the end, she didn't manage to take the necklace, but she tore the chain, and I quietly cried, feeling as though she had destroyed a memory shared with my husband. After that incident, I started to ignore my sister completely, feeling nothing but discomfort whenever we met. In avoiding her, I also decided to distance myself from her family. However, my brother-in-law was always busy with work and frequently on business trips, so we seldom saw each other anyway. Even when we did meet, in stark contrast to my chatty sister, my brother-in-law was a man of few words, and we hardly ever spoke. Nevertheless, being influenced by my sister who flaunted her wealth, I came to view my brother-in-law as someone who was also likely to boast about being wealthy. My sister and her husband have a 9-year-old daughter named Susan, who also seems to dislike me and my husband. I don't think we've done anything to warrant such disdain from her, but every time we meet, she glares at us, and even when spoken to, she hardly responds. While I've grown distant from my sister's family, and it's not particularly an issue, being treated coldly even by my niece does make me feel a bit sad. So, while I have managed to cut ties with my sister and her family, I often hear about my sister's activities through a neighbor who works part-time at the same place as me. According to them, my sister recently gave birth to her second child. In between being busy with childcare, she seems to be living happily, indulging in her favorite brands. On one peaceful day, having no interactions with my sister, leading a calm life, I encountered an unexpected incident. It was in the dead of winter when the news was all about an incoming severe cold wave. With snow expected to start falling, I headed to the local supermarket to finish up some shopping. It was incredibly cold, as the news had warned, and I was walking briskly with my scarf pulled up to my nose. Then, on my way, I happened to spot my niece, Susan. Before Susan noticed me, I thought about quickly leaving. However, something about her seemed off, catching my attention. Strangely, she wasn't wearing her coat, just holding it in her arms. Looking closer at what she was carrying, I realized it was a baby, to my surprise. Moreover, both Susan and the baby looked unnaturally thin and their clothes were dirty. She was walking with her nose bright red, clutching the coat tightly around the baby as if to protect it from the cold. Clearly struggling and shivering from the cold herself. "Susan, where are you going in this cold with a baby? Come on, at least come to my place to warm up for a bit." I couldn't just ignore her and called out to my niece. Startled by my voice, she jumped and then, upon seeing me, started yelling at me aggressively.
"Shut up! Who says I'm going to your house?"
Though I knew she disliked me, her vehement rejection took me aback. But under such cold conditions, I felt it was dangerous to leave her and the baby alone.
"But you must be cold without your coat on, right? Let's warm up at my place for a bit. Then, I can take you home, okay?"
I tried to speak to my niece with the gentlest tone and a smile, but she was adamant in her refusal.
"It's not cold, just leave me alone. I have to protect this baby. I won't hand them over to someone bad like you."
"I wouldn't hurt you or the baby, I promise."
"Lies. Mom said to never trust you."
Despite my attempts to reach out, my niece wouldn't grab my hand and refused to listen to anything I said, continuing to resist with her unsteady body. I was internally panicking, wondering how I could possibly help them when suddenly a car pulled up right beside us. To my surprise, it was my husband who got out of the car. "Well, no choice then, I guess I'll have to take you by force." Saying just that, he quickly picked up my niece, baby and all, and placed them in the car. "Maple, hurry up and get in," he urged, and as I rushed into the passenger seat, he started the car with a bit of roughness. "Just stay calm, and I won't harm you. Please, don't make a fuss," he said nonchalantly, not even looking at my niece. As for my niece, perhaps intimidated by my husband's firmness or the suddenness of being brought into the car, she became quiet, a stark contrast to her previous behavior. However, she looked so pale and weak that she seemed like she might collapse at any moment. My husband took us, including my niece and the baby, straight to the hospital. Lost in confusion, my niece and the baby were taken away by a nurse. While waiting for their examination to finish, I asked my husband, "Hey, what's all this about? Why were you there just now? And why rush to the hospital of all places?" His forceful action, almost akin to kidnapping, made me slightly confrontational, but he responded with a wry smile. "It was pure coincidence that I was there, just happened to pass by on my way home from work. I was curious about what you were arguing about, but more than that, Susan and the baby looked terribly pale. I just thought we needed to get them to a warm place right away." He initially thought our home would suffice for warmth, but was alarmed by their unnaturally light weight when he picked them up. Fearing that their poor complexion wasn't just due to the cold but possibly due to illness, he instinctively decided to head not home but to a hospital that could provide appropriate care. Although being suddenly put in the car was a shock, if my husband hadn't shown up and it was just me, I wouldn't have been able to do anything. Reflecting on it, his actions, while abrupt, were immensely appreciated. Eventually, it seemed the examination for my niece and the baby was complete, and my husband and I were informed about their condition by the doctor. Apparently, both were suffering from malnutrition and were now receiving 4 drips while resting in warm beds. Aside from malnutrition, there appeared to be no other abnormalities, providing us some initial relief. However, the situation of a 9-year-old wandering outside without any adult supervision, carrying a malnourished infant, raised suspicions of neglect. When we informed the doctor that we were not fully aware of the circumstances, he immediately reported the situation to the police. About 30 minutes later, after the 4 had finished and my niece woke up, we had a chance to talk to her. Whether it was the hospital environment or the warmth of the place that calmed her down, my niece was no longer in her previous state of total refusal and was willing to engage in a normal conversation. According to her, my sister, her mother, was currently away on a trip with friends and not at home. Likewise, my brother-in-law was absent due to his usual business trips. During my sister's absence, she had left the entire care of the baby to my niece with the instruction, "You take care of it." However, without any specific guidance, my niece had been trying to care for the baby by imitating what she had seen her mother do. Amidst this, the baby's complexion turned pale, and it started crying inconsolably. Unable to calm the baby down, my niece decided to take the baby to the hospital. She used her only coat to wrap the baby for warmth and set out for the hospital despite the cold. I stumbled upon my niece during that journey. Had we not found them, my niece and her siblings might have frozen to death by now. Realizing this possibility made me shiver. That must have been tough. By the way, why did you have such an aversive attitude towards my wife? My husband casually inquired, and my niece awkwardly averted her gaze as she responded. Apparently, from a young age, my sister had instilled in her the lie that I was a bad person. She told my niece, "I was bullied by my sister since we were kids. She's a bad person, so you must never get close to her." Of course, that was a lie from my sister, but to a child, a mother's words are everything. Without verifying the truth, my niece grew up believing I was the enemy who bullied her mother. However, witnessing how my husband and I earnestly tried to help them this time made her question what she had been told by her mother. "Is what Mom said true? Were you bullying her?" My niece asked with sincere eyes, and I shook my head in response. Your mom and I got along when we were kids. If you don't believe me, you should ask Grandma and Grandpa." Moved by my answer, my niece tearfully bowed deeply. "I'm sorry for being so defiant when you were just trying to help. I'm sorry for hating you all this time because I believed what Mom said." Understanding the reason my niece had always disliked us brought me relief, but also a strong anger towards my sister. According to my niece, my sister wouldn't be back until tomorrow, so we decided to take care of my niece and her siblings for the night. After apologizing, my niece seemed to feel lighter and started to engage in normal conversations with us, albeit still a bit awkwardly. Feeling her becoming more comfortable, I asked her about her daily life while we were eating dinner at our house. It turned out that even before the baby was born, my niece often had to stay home alone. During those times, my sister neither prepared meals in advance nor gave her money for food, leaving my niece to go hungry. I felt a simmering anger towards my sister's selfish actions. After ensuring my niece and the baby were fed and had fallen asleep, I called my parents to plan revenge on my sister. The next day, my husband and I took my niece and her siblings to my sister's house. My parents were already waiting there, and my mother rushed to embrace my niece and her siblings the moment she saw them. "You've had a tough time, haven't you? You did well." Held by my mother, my niece quietly shed tears. Then, we decided to wait for my sister's return. While leaving my niece with my mother, I went around the neighborhood to inquire about my sister's behavior. When I shared that she had been neglecting my niece and the baby to go out, most of the neighbors were outraged and shared their observations of my sister's usual cold treatment towards my niece, including frequently yelling at her. Also, having learned that my sister was expected to return home sometime after noon today, I waited for her with my parents. I tried calling my sister's cell to inform her that we had taken care of my niece overnight and that we were waiting for her return at her house, but as expected, she did not answer. So, ignoring my sister's lack of response, I continued to wait for her return at the entrance of her house, together with my parents. After a while, my sister arrived back home with a few friends.
"What? Why are you here? And Mom and Dad too? What do you want?"
Upon seeing me, my sister immediately showed her displeasure without trying to hide it. I stared back at her without backing down and said, "Last night, we found Susan walking with the baby and took care of them. I tried contacting you many times, but you never noticed, did you? There should have been numerous missed calls from not only me but also the police and our parents regarding this matter." Pointing this out to my sister, who seemed unaware, prompted her to hurriedly check her phone. Seeing the call log, the color drained from her face. Realizing the situation was serious after seeing missed calls from the police as well, she said, "Oh. I just remembered I have something else to do. So, I'll be going." "Wait. Where do you think you're going?" As she tried to flee, our father grabbed her by the scruff of the neck to stop her. Caught by our father, my sister momentarily tried to struggle and resist but soon gave up and hung her head in resignation. Our parents have always been strict about manners and etiquette, and from a young age, my sister and I were brought up to be well disciplined. I am grateful to my parents for instilling in us the proper attitude and manners one should have as a person, but my sister seemed to struggle with such formalities and often disliked our parents for it, frequently escaping from their discipline. My parents, particularly my father, never overlooked such behavior from my sister, and I believe his attitude towards her was quite strict. Perhaps because of this, even as an adult, my sister still feels intimidated by our father. The sight of our family arguing as soon as my sister returned home, especially with my father catching her trying to flee, caused her friends to become uneasy. In front of them, our parents loudly scolded her for her mistreatment of her grandchildren, including this incident.
"How could you go on a trip leaving a 9-year-old and an infant behind? What were you thinking? You say Susan is responsible, but she's still a child. To dump the care of a baby on such a child. Are you even a mother? And it's not just this time, it seems you've left Susan alone to fend for herself many times before, without even preparing meals. Do you even realize you're a mother? If your husband is often away on business trips, it's all the more your responsibility to look after the home and children, isn't it?
As my parents revealed more about my sister's behavior, her friends were puzzled, asking, "What do you mean, and didn't you say you were leaving the kids with your parents?" However, witnessing the anger of our parents, the sheepishness of my sister, and the frightened look of my niece peeking out from behind us, they seemed to realize the truth in my parents' words. Now, everyone present was glaring at my sister. As if she couldn't stand the atmosphere, my sister continued to make excuses while trembling and turning pale.
It's not like that. I was told my husband was at home yesterday.
Lies.
Then how do you explain everything up to now?
That's. While this exchange was ongoing, the police arrived. Excuse us, we are from Central Police Station. We received a report last night suggesting your daughters might be subjected to abuse. Could we discuss this matter in more detail? Oh, wait. Eventually, without much resistance, my sister was taken to the police station. After being taken in, my sister underwent questioning and, being her first offense, was released with just a stern warning. The person who appeared as my sister's guarantor was her husband. It seems our parents had contacted him last night, and he had rushed back from a business trip. While we were taking care of my niece and her siblings at my sister's house, waiting for their return, my sister and her visibly angry husband came back in the evening. Upon seeing her father, my niece joyfully hugged him.
Daddy! Welcome home!
Susan, I'm home. I'm sorry for making you feel lonely. I'm sorry. He hugged my niece tightly, as if making up for the lost time. After putting the children to bed, my husband and I, along with our parents and my sister and her husband, sat down for a serious discussion. When her husband demanded that she tell everything, my sister, still pale, looked down and made excuses, saying, "I wanted a change of pace because of parenting stress."
Even though it seems like you're always hunting for brand name bags.
It's the talk of the neighborhood, you know? What? There was no way my sister was mentally exhausted from childcare. Convinced that she was lying, I shared information I had heard from my colleagues. I recounted not only this incident but also episodes of my sister doing as she pleased while her husband was away, as a form of retaliation for her past actions. Hearing this, her husband became furious. "You've been doing such things while I was gone." To prove the truth of my accusations, a quick search of the house revealed a stash of brand-name goods hidden in the back of my sister's closet. So, what Maple said is true. Faced with the evidence of the brand-name goods, my sister nodded in resignation. According to her confession, she had lied to her husband about the children attending expensive lessons to receive a large sum of money. Moreover, she often neglected the children's care, not only when she was out but also when she was at home. I'm so disappointed in you.
You always said you were managing the housework and childcare properly.
Let's get a divorce. Having had enough of her, her husband declared his intention to divorce her. Having no excuses left for her misdeeds, my sister quietly accepted the divorce. She couldn't let go of her pride in their mansion, pleading with her husband, "Please leave the house to me." Her husband, who had no interest in the house, agreed to transfer it to her in exchange for a reduction in her share of the other assets. However, the story of what happened spread among the neighbors and her circle of friends, tarnishing her reputation as a woman who mistreated her children and was abandoned by her husband. No one was willing to help my sister. She faced scorn when she went shopping, was rejected when she tried to find part-time work in the neighborhood, and became completely isolated. Eventually, unable to step outside her home and mentally deteriorating, my sister sought help from our parents. However, they had disowned her at the time of her divorce and refused to have any involvement with her. Abandoned by everyone, my sister now lives miserably in the once prized mansion that has turned into a house of clutter. On the other hand, her husband had been seeking to change his work style for the sake of the family. He had applied for a transfer to a department without business trips, hoping to spend more time with his family, and it seemed likely his request would be granted soon. Deciding he couldn't leave the children with their mostly absent mother, he took custody. A decision our parents and I fully supported. The children, especially fond of their father, were thrilled to live with him, saying, "We get to live with Daddy." Without any allies, my sister was left despondent. After the divorce, my brother-in-law and the children moved close to our home. To fill the void of the past lack of interaction, my husband and I sometimes play with the children. Since the incident, the niece has become attached to us, and we occasionally look after her and her sibling when my brother-in-law works late.
The baby is growing up healthy and is at a very cute age. Watching the children grow up, we spend our days feeling happy and fulfilled.
Stay out of the way, old hag. Just spend Christmas there. It seems I was kicked out of the house by my son's wife, who I had invited in because she wanted to spend the end of year together. I need to tell my son about her true nature somehow. I'll expose her for who she really is, no matter what it takes. I refuse to be family with someone like her. My name is Michelle. I'm 72 years old and live with my son. He's approaching 40 but is still single. My husband passed away 3 years ago. My son used to live alone, but he moved back home when it became more convenient due to a job change. Our house is a single-story home. It looks almost new but was actually renovated not too long ago. It used to be a shabby old place, but after years of wear and tear, my late husband decided to remodel it. Thanks to the renovation, it's now comfortable and beautiful. Just hearing this, you'd think my husband decided to remodel the house out of consideration for the family's comfort. But in reality, it wasn't like that at all. Instead, he had been a source of trouble for many years. He was a typical stubborn old man, free-spirited outside the house. At home, he acted like he was the center of everything, and would scold me terribly if I ever deviated from his expectations. "Who do you think feeds you?" was his constant refrain. But outside, he wasted money on gambling and other vices, leaving barely anything for the household. We barely scraped by. Yet, he still acted superior in front of me and my son. There were broken promises of family outings because of his gambling, and he often missed school events. I could have divorced him and raised my son alone, but I didn't want to give up. My son seemed to feel the same, never showing tears in front of his father. When my husband died, he left behind a small inheritance, this renovated house, and our precious son. Having my son, I don't feel lonely. He's always been kind, the opposite of his father. In the best light, he's kind and always thinks of others, unable to ignore those in trouble. But on the downside, he's self-sacrificing and struggles to express his own opinions. He tends to be easily swayed by stronger personalities. "I'll never be like my father," he'd say, but he's often put himself at a disadvantage to help others in need, ending up in thankless roles. Once, he'd lend notes to schoolmates but wouldn't get them back, which affected his own grades. Another time, he joined a sports club he wasn't interested in just because a friend asked him. I had to join because my friend said he wouldn't know anyone else there if I didn't. Like this, even in situations where my son ended up in such a role, his kindness was always at the forefront. I'm happy that he's grown into a kind man, but his excessive kindness worries me. I always fear that one day, it might get him into serious trouble. He says his current workplace has a good atmosphere and it's easy to work there, but it seems like it's mostly men, and there's hardly any gossip. As for me, now that my husband is gone, I'd be alone if my son married. I'd be lonely, but as a mother, I'd be happy for him. Then one day, he made a sudden confession. I've promised to marry someone. I want you to meet her. I was overjoyed. My son, nearing 40, works mostly with men, living at home with his mother. If you just look at his situation other than his personality, he's the type who would usually be avoided first. It's a miracle a woman who wants to marry him appeared. If things keep progressing smoothly and my son ends up marrying this woman, of course, he will eventually leave my side. I'll miss him, but his happiness is what matters most as a mother. If you chose her, I'd love to meet her. What's she like? I met her at a mixer a colleague took me to 6 months ago. She's earnest, strong, and resilient. I want to build a family with her. That's why I want you to meet her." As he talked about her, his eyes sparkled like I had never seen before. I knew she must be special. I looked forward to meeting the woman he had confidently chosen. Then came the promised day. It was the day my son would bring home the girlfriend he's seeing. "Mom, this is Jessica, the woman I've been talking about. We're considering getting married." But the woman my son brought home didn't introduce herself or even greeted. She just stood there. At first glance, she gave off the impression of someone haughty and aloof. Honestly, I couldn't imagine her being the type my son would fall for. After that, she continued determinedly ignoring as if nothing had happened. She barely greeted me and scrutinized every corner of our house. She made a face when she tasted the coffee I offered. Every time she touched something, she'd pull out a sanitizing wipe and clean it, a string of odd behaviors. It was our first meeting. Especially with someone who might become your mother-in-law, this was clearly inappropriate. I've always dreamed of doting on my son's wife like my own daughter, as my son was my only child, but that dream seemed to shatter in an instant. Frankly, I found her unpleasant even in this short time, and I didn't want to get too close to her, even if she's my son's choice and my future daughter-in-law. It seemed she felt the same, as days passed without any further contact. After she left, I confronted my son. "You're serious about her and even want to marry her, right? Based on today, I just don't see her charm. She's shy around new people. But she's an attractive woman, strong and kind, having overcome many hardships." From his detailed account, they met at a mixer set up by his colleague. Sitting next to my son, she went on about all the hard and sad things she'd experienced all the time. Normally, you wouldn't feel good for someone who brags about their misfortunes at a mixer, but he felt I'm sorry for her and want to rescue her. That is my son. Their relationship started with his determination to make her happy. Despite how they met, it was just like my son, but taking it to marriage was another story. Given her behavior today and their unusual start, she seemed like a complicated person. Her behavior might seem endearing at this stage. But I had a hunch that living with her would be challenging. Then, suddenly, my son announced he was moving out. I suspected this had something to do with her. When I thought of him living with that woman the other day, I had mixed feelings. Then, he muttered something unexpected. "I didn't think she'd go ahead and do it now. She said she wanted to wait until we were both ready, to make it a special day."
"Do what? You mean?"
"Our marriage. We were supposed to decide the date and we are both ready to live together." It sounded unbelievable, but apparently, my son's girlfriend couldn't wait for marriage. Between my first impression, the episodes my son shared, and now this rash action, I was filled with anxiety.
"I'm worried. Are you sure everything's okay?"
"It's fine, she's a kind woman." "Oh, I got a message from Jessica. She said you can choose our wedding gift from this list." When I checked the list she sent, everything on it cost several $1,000s. It's not an amount I can easily afford, even for my son's wedding. It's audacious of her to act so rudely when we first met, decided marriage without my son knowing, and then ask for such expensive home appliances. It was surprising that my son would choose such a person as his life partner, but wanting to celebrate their new beginning, I decided to gift them a state-of-the-art air conditioner, one of the items she wanted. "Jessica wants this air conditioner, so I give it to you too as my wedding gift." "Thanks, Mom. I appreciate you listening to her request." It wasn't cheap, but I splurged, thinking of my son and his loved one's new life. Despite getting her the air conditioner she wanted, I never received a thank you or any message from son's wife. Is this how people are these days? Days passed without any contact from my son or his wife, Jessica. They lived in an apartment in the next town over, less than an hour's drive from my house, but I hadn't heard a peep from them. I thought it wouldn't be too hard to drop by, but they must have been busy with work and their new married life. Not wanting to intrude, I refrained from reaching out, but then a situation arose where I had to contact them. It was my brother's funeral, my son's uncle. While we hadn't been in touch much recently, he had always been fond of my son since he was little. I wanted them to attend the funeral, even if they couldn't make it to the wake. It had been a while since we last spoke, so I decided to call. But no matter how many times I tried, I couldn't get through to my son's cell phone. The next day, I got a message saying the call couldn't be connected, like I was blocked. My son, who was always so gentle and never missed a chance to stay in touch, blocking my calls. It was hard to believe, but there was nothing I could do, and funerals don't wait. My son and his wife didn't attend, and my brother's funeral went on without them. Half a year later, out of the blue, I got a call from Jessica.
Hey, I was thinking you might be lonely around Christmas. My husband has a middle school reunion around the same time and he wants to let loose a bit. Can we spend with you?
She didn't mention the wedding gift, the missed funeral, or the fact that my calls were blocked. Just like that, she talked about spending Christmas at my place. Although it was a shock for me, it might not have been a big deal to her. She seemed to assume I wouldn't refuse. I was apprehensive about staying under the same roof as her, but I longed to see my son, so I accepted her proposal.
Sure, that's fine. I'm looking forward to seeing you both after such a long time.
And so, they came to my house for Christmas. When they arrived, something felt off. The two of them were constantly together. But it was not in a loving or friendly way. They were just always together. Even when my son went to the bathroom or to get something from a room, Jessica followed him. At first, I thought she might have something to do in the same direction, but that didn't seem to be the case. It's hard to describe, but from her gaze and movements, it almost felt like she was monitoring my son, making sure he didn't do anything strange. When I got up to make tea, I caught a glimpse of my son's face and was shocked. He was looking down, avoiding eye contact with her. I couldn't understand why they were acting like this. But the reason behind their behavior would soon become clear. In the evening, my son left for his middle school reunion. Feeling awkward alone with Jessica, I decided to do some cleaning. I was vacuuming as usual when suddenly the vacuum stopped working.
What? It was working fine yesterday.
Then, with a loud bang and a forceful shove, I found myself toppled over. At that moment, I couldn't comprehend what was happening. The vacuum and I were thrown outside into the yard. Thankfully, I was wearing thick socks, but with the snow piled up outside, I was at risk of freezing. Who would do such a thing? A stranger? A robber? As I tried to get up and saw who was there, I was stunned to see it was Jessica.
You're just right for spending Christmas there. Wait, what? Jessica, do you even realize what you're doing?
Shut up, you old hag.
I'm looking forward to having fun now that he's not around. It would be the perfect night if it weren't for you getting in the way.
Saying this, Jessica started talking on the phone with someone. From the name she was calling, it seemed like she was talking to a man. The way she was sweetly talking in a voice I've never heard her use before made it clear. She was planning to meet her lover. From the bits of conversation I could barely hear, it seemed she was planning to use this house for dating, pretending to be her own house. Indeed, my house is newly renovated, and as a minimalist, I don't have many belongings. But who would have thought that someone would use my mother-in-law's house, where their husband grew up, as a place to cheat, pretending it's their own home? She took advantage of her husband going to a reunion and kicked me, her mother-in-law, out of the house, claiming I was in her way, and even pushed me out into the snowy garden. Well, if that's how it's going to be, I have a plan of my own. I dressed in an old pair of shoes and a coat I found in the storage and set out to fight back. First, I doubted my son knew about this affair. Even my son, who's as gentle as they come, would surely take some action if he knew his beloved wife was cheating so blatantly. I had to contact him immediately and let him see the affair happening in our house. But my calls were blocked on his phone. As I pondered over what to do, I remembered someone. It was a childhood friend of my son. They had been close up to college and continued to meet for meals even after graduating. This friend had inherited a deli from his parents in the local shopping district. I might get some information there. Feeling like clutching even at straws, I went to the deli, only to find his parents there. Probably because he was at the reunion too. I asked them about the location of the reunion. I learned it was at a small tavern in the same shopping district. I rushed there, hoping to spot my son easily in such a small place. Luckily, I saw him returning to the tavern after buying something at a supermarket. I quickly approached him.
I'm so glad I found you. Jessica kicked me out of the house. She's planning to spend time there with some man. I overheard her phone conversation. Do you know anything about this?
What? Jessica's cheating? No way!
Hearing this, my son immediately left the reunion and headed for our house. I offered to go with him, but he insisted it was too dangerous as we don't know what Jessica would do and what kind of person the man might be. I took refuge in a nearby hotel, leaving the matter to my son. The next day, when I returned home, I found Jessica beaten up and lying naked in the garden.
Damn it, you old hag. Don't you care about helping your daughter-in-law? I can't even get into the house. What kind of upbringing did you give your son?
I couldn't believe my gentle son would beat his wife and leave her in the garden. Entering the house, I found my son drinking coffee.
Hey, Jessica was naked in the garden. What happened?
I don't know.
She was fighting with her affair partner last night. It's none of my business now. She's going to be a stranger to me.
When I was taking refuge in a hotel, my son had stormed into the scene where his wife, Jessica, was cheating with her lover. Thinking it would serve as evidence if something happened, he took photos of the lover's face and even recorded the confrontation. I was impressed by his calmness in such a bizarre situation. From the recording, it was clear that the lover, caught off guard by my husband's return, lashed out in anger and even struck Jessica. It seemed like he stripped her of the expensive-looking branded clothes she was wearing, perhaps intending to sell them off. The recording captured everything, even these details. After the lover left, my son was the one who stopped Jessica from entering the house again.
I think you understand from the recording, but it's clear Jessica is not remorseful. She said she married me for money, or because I was convenient to use. And to top it off, she keeps saying her lover is her number one. So, I've got a place I need to go to, so I'm leaving Jessica's matters to you, Mom.
Leave it to me? What do you mean?
I didn't want to let someone like her into our house, so I didn't. If you want to let her in, I won't stop you.
With that, my son left. As for me, Jessica has put us through a lot of trouble up to this point. Even though she was likely beaten up by her angry lover, I think it's just desserts for her actions. I don't feel any obligation to help her out, so I decided to just leave her be. I had a pretty good idea of the situation from my son's photos and recordings, but to further clarify things, I decided to check the security camera footage as well. I'm glad I installed these cameras after hearing about a burglary at a relative's house. It was just in case, but it turned out to be a wise decision. It seems that neither Jessica, my son's wife, nor her lover realized that we had security cameras. They were behaving recklessly in someone else's house and even caused trouble. The footage captured by these cameras, coupled with the strange hat seen in the photos my son took, seemed oddly familiar. As I was pondering this, I noticed a commotion outside. The sound of the doorbell rang, and someone had come to visit. When I opened the door, there stood a police officer. It appeared that Jessica, playing the victim, had cried to the neighbors. Someone had reported to the police about an injured, naked woman in the garden.
I'm sorry for the disturbance. She seems to have gotten into some trouble, but neither my son nor I saw her get injured. We do have a security camera, so we can explain what kind of trouble it was.
I proceeded to show the police the footage and photos from last night's incident. Thankfully, the police understood that my son and I weren't involved. However, as police officers, they couldn't leave a woman injured and naked in the cold of winter. Jessica was taken away in a patrol car. Just as I remembered who the man in my son's ex-wife's affair was, my son returned.
Mom, I'm back.
I just filed for divorce.
She's nothing to me now.
Divorce? What do you mean?
Since we got married, Jessica would cry and make a scene whenever things didn't go her way. I tried to meet her expectations, but she started testing my patience. Her trump card was a divorce paper. From what my son told me, he was completely enamored with Jessica and did everything to fulfill her wishes. However, Jessica exploited his feelings, behaving outrageously. And she used the threat of divorce to control him. I was speechless upon hearing this. However, I reconsidered and decided to share with my son what I had just remembered. He seemed to have a moment of realization and quickly stood up, urging me to follow him. We headed to the police station where Jessica was being held. My son and I went to the room where Jessica was being temporarily held for her protection.
Ted! I was waiting for you. I knew you would come to rescue me. You're my dear husband, after all. You wouldn't be so heartless as to ignore your wife in such a state.
What are you talking about? We're strangers now. My mom and I just came to tell you something important, that's all.
What? What do you mean? Is this some kind of bad joke? I understand if this old lady came to apologize for leaving me in the garden, but strangers?
Jessica probably thought I was there to apologize for leaving her outside and that Ted came to take back his beloved wife. I've filed for divorce. I had a divorce paper which you had already filled out your part of the form, and I submitted it. We're nothing to each other now.
What? How dare you do something like this, Ted?
Remember when you filed the marriage certificate without telling me? It's not fair to do something to others that you don't want done to yourself, is it? Jessica was speechless and dejected at Ted's logic, but I had something to add. That man you brought home, he's a business owner, right? Yeah, he's a young and talented CEO of a beauty salon. He said he'd marry me, so I was dating him. But then, this happened. That man is actually an unemployed freeloader. It seems he did something terrible at a restaurant, and that's why he's jobless now. I've always enjoyed social media and often browse through it. I see news and interesting stories, but lately, there's been no end to stories about outrageous behavior in restaurants going viral. When I saw him, I realized he was the same person at the center of these viral controversies that many people were talking about recently. This guy was causing trouble by drinking directly from water pitchers and adding Tabasco sauce into them, right? I read that he recently got fired from his part-time job because of these antics.
That's a lie! His profile had a long list of accomplishments. There's no way he, a CEO, would do such things. Just last week, he proposed to me with a bouquet of roses, saying he'd make me his wife soon.
Well, that aside, there's a lot of damage he caused at my house when he was causing a ruckus. I could file a complaint for his disruptive behavior. She truly believed he was a CEO and thought that by being with him, she'd become a CEO's wife. To add to her disillusionment, I decided to press on further. There's a female executive at your workplace, right? She's an old friend of mine.
What? You told my workplace about my affair.
Of course not. I simply consulted my friend how I get along with my son's wife. Was there a problem? You know, you shouldn't do things in the first place if you're going to be embarrassed being seen doing them. Jessica, my son's ex-wife, turned pale as one shocking revelation after another was revealed to her. Leaving her behind in that state, we exited the police station. Afterward, Jessica's workplace found out about the awful way she treated her mother-in-law and that her affair had led to her divorce. I heard from the friend that, as a long-standing veteran at her job, she was being considered for a promotion. However, due to her own actions, that opportunity dissolved. Her terrible behavior resulted in a toxic work environment, leading to her being transferred to a regional office. However, even at her new location, everyone was aware of the sordid details of her affair and its messy end, which caused her to become isolated there.
Why is everyone avoiding me? All I did was have a true love affair with a talented CEO. What, are they all jealous that I could have been a CEO's wife? Tell that friend of yours, the executive, to stop this ridiculous office bullying. You think being ostracized and floating aimlessly in your transferred location is all due to jealousy and bullying? I see you're quite optimistic in your thinking. Unfortunately, there's nothing I can do about your situation.
In the end, she found no place for herself at work and ultimately had to resign. To make matters worse, my son's ex-wife ended up homeless.
You know, even if she is your ex-wife, how do you expect her to get through this winter without a home? Telling a woman to shiver outside, isn't that heartless?
What are you talking about?
Who was it that suddenly threw my mother out into a snow-covered garden? In the first place, everything you say and do is just out of self-love and it's all wrong.
The apartment my son and his ex-wife lived in was his company housing for married employees. Due with the divorce, she was evicted. Despite everything, Jessica, stubborn and unwilling to give up, frequently stormed back to my son's place, shouting and demanding, even after being kicked out.
You're there, aren't you? How can you not reach out to help your own wife when she's in such trouble? Don't you have any kindness? Expecting kindness from others while ignoring your own actions? Is that how it works? Well, I guess it's pointless to explain.
Not satisfied with just going to my son's place, Jessica started showing up at my house too. I'm not free to deal with her antics, but she didn't stop at just coming to my home. She even started following me to the supermarket I frequently visit.
How can you just leave your daughter-in-law in this situation? Could you do the same to your own son? Your son abandoned his troubled wife like she was disposable. What kind of upbringing did you give him?
Abandoned?
Troubled wife? This situation is entirely the result of seeds you sowed yourself. Have you forgotten your own actions? I don't even think of you as a daughter-in-law anymore.
Each time she did this, the security system would be activated, or bystanders would call the police. As a result, she became known throughout the town as a person of interest. My son and I, unable to tolerate her persistence any longer, consulted with the police and obtained a restraining order against her. She now appears to be trying to find her next target by attending matchmaking parties. However, with no money, no job, and unable to present herself well, she's often turned away at the entrance. She's become somewhat of a notorious figure in certain circles for disrupting these events, making marriage unlikely for her. Finally, the relentless assaults from my son's ex-wife have ceased, and we are living in peace.
Mom, back then, I was out of my mind with all the things Jessica was saying to me. She cut me off from contacting home and screamed at me all day. But I've finally woken up. I'm really sorry for everything.
Since then, my son and I have been living together again. Whether he remarries or continues to stay with me, I'll be happy as long as he maintains his kindness and treats others well.
I won't let anyone else in the car. Please come by foot,
said my son's wife, chuckling as she twirled the car keys around her finger to show me. While organizing the situation in my head, I felt a sense of despair. How long would it take to get to my son and his wife's new home from here? Following my son's job transfer, they decided to move to the countryside, building a house in a modest residential area. Unfortunately, public transportation only goes so far, not reaching close to their new home. Smirking with delight, my son's wife quickly returned to where the others were, leaving me behind. With no other choice, I sighed and took out my smartphone to see how far I could get by bus. It seemed there was a bus from here that could shorten the walking distance. Gathering my spirits, I searched for the bus stop when someone tapped my shoulder, making me turn around.
Why?
I was surprised by the person behind me and couldn't find the words to continue. My name is Susan. I'm 72 years old this year. Thanks to the environment I grew up in, I'm quite sturdy for my age. Right after graduating, I married into a family that ran a business, and I worked there as well. My job was to deliver goods over the mountain to a store, taking over for my husband, father-in-law, and mother-in-law who worked at the store or did deliveries by car. Even after having my first son, I continued doing this, carrying him on my back. My son is now grown up, married, and seems to be living happily. I still remember when he brought home his wife, wanting to marry her. Despite being nervous, I was surprised but agreed since he was so serious. However, it seems she doesn't like me much, going out of her way to bother me when my husband and son aren't looking. Maybe she's annoyed that my son, who is kind-hearted, pays too much attention not just to her but to us as well. Initially, I kept silent for the sake of my son's choice, but lately, her harassment has become unbearable. One Christmas, looking forward to my son and his wife's visit after a long time, I thought she wouldn't dare do anything with my husband and son around. But as soon as she arrived at our home, she asked to use the kitchen to show her gratitude with her cooking, so I accepted her offer. I was quite worried about her, then suddenly she caused a disaster with an exploding microwave. Upon hearing the sound, everyone rushed to the kitchen and we saw milk and ketchup all over the floor. The kitchen was a complete mess. Sitting on the floor, crying about wanting to help, she was consoled by my son and husband, who could only laugh it off. As my son tried to take her to the shower, she looked back at me and smirked. My husband, busy cleaning up, didn't see her malicious face. Realizing it was another of her harassments, I was furious but had to keep quiet and help clean silently. Months later, with my son's transfer looming, they decided to build a house, planning ahead. Originally working at the headquarters in New York, my son was assigned to a branch, prompting the move. The branch was in our hometown, and we considered living together. But his wife strictly opposed it, so they built their new home. There was a disagreement over the down payment for the new house, sparked by my son insisting on handling the finances themselves. Though grateful, I wondered where his stay-at-home wife would get such money. The next day, she called, asking for money for the new house, claiming I had plenty because I was frugal. When I objected, saying this wasn't what I was told, she retorted, "Well, I want to look good in front of Roy too. I've already told him I'd pay, so please give it to me as soon as possible." Though I wondered why I had to give money to my son's wife, I decided to stay silent and give it for my son's sake. However, after the house was built, I never received any thanks. As the fiscal year-end approached and my son's transfer was finalized, they invited us to see the new house.
"We'll send the address to your smartphone. Bring a housewarming gift,"
she said before hanging up. Despite disliking her attitude, I was curious about the house I helped fund. My husband and I planned to visit next weekend. Upon arriving at the airport in their town, to my surprise, they came to pick us up. Initially, we were supposed to go directly to their house, but my son kindly offered a ride. After reuniting, we decided to grab lunch at a food court inside the station, enjoying a peaceful moment since it had been a while since we last met. With my husband and son around, his wife behaved, which relieved me. Before heading to their new home, I excused myself to use the restroom. But it was lunchtime, and everywhere was crowded. Finally, after using the restroom and washing my hands, someone suddenly spoke to me from behind.
"Are you still here? Roy said to go look for you because you're taking so long,"
said my son's wife, glaring at me unpleasantly. Being scolded in front of so many people, I felt intimidated. Pleased with my reaction, my son's wife smirked.
"Are you still using that dirty handkerchief? It's about time to throw it away,"
she scoffed, pointing at the jet dryer while laughing through her nose at the handkerchief I was holding.
"Nobody carries a handkerchief around anymore. Don't you know about jet dryers?"
"Poor thing," she said loudly enough for others to notice us, drawing disdainful looks from other users. Seeing me shrink even more, my son's wife got carried away and said,
"I don't want to be associated with someone so poor. I'd rather pretend we're strangers. So, strangers don't get rides in the car. You can walk, Susan,"
chuckling as she twirled the car keys in front of me demonstratively. Realizing what this meant, I felt a mild sense of despair as I sorted through the situation in my head. How far would it be to my son and his wife's new home from here? Their new home was in a modest residential area far from here. Unfortunately, public transportation only goes so far, not reaching close to their new house.
"Oh, I have the gift you were supposed to bring. I'll be taking it in advance, okay?"
she said, distorting her mouth in amusement before quickly going back to the others, leaving me behind. Feeling slightly relieved after my son's wife left, I sighed and decided to take the bus as far as possible, taking out my smartphone to check. Luckily, there seemed to be a bus from here that could reduce the walking distance somewhat. Regaining my composure, I looked for the bus stop when someone tapped my shoulder, making me turn around.
Why?
Surprised by the person behind me, I couldn't find the words to continue.
There you are, I've been looking for you.
Seeing my husband's face when I turned around eased the anxiety that had stiffened my heart. As we headed to the bus stop, I told him everything while he followed, puzzled yet listening. I told him about the harassment from my son's wife, the issue with the finances for the new house, and everything that happened today, sharing everything as we rode the bus together. Throughout, my husband listened silently, his frown deepening as the story progressed. After I finished, he simply said he'd walk with me and remained silent. Despite my insistence to turn back, he steadfastly refused. When the bus reached its final stop, everyone disembarked. Now, from here. The distance to my son and his wife's new home was significant, with no public transport available. Entering the destination into my map app, it showed it would take roughly over 3 hours to arrive. Let's go. Unsure of which direction to head, I stared at the map app, but my husband started walking without hesitation. Following him, I checked the map app to ensure we weren't going the wrong way. However, my husband had chosen the correct direction. A short while later, my phone rang. Seeing it was from my son's wife, I hesitated to answer, looking towards my husband for help. Noticing my gaze, he glanced at my phone, grimaced, took it, and pocketed it before continuing to walk. Realizing I had stopped, he looked back, silently took my hand, and we started walking again. Surprised by the suddenness, I had a lot to say, but it all flew out of my mind. My husband pulled me along silently, never hesitating. Despite the many forks in the road, he chose the path without any hesitation. And I followed silently, hearing my phone vibrate periodically. I finally pulled at my husband's hand and suggested, "It must be Kelly calling. Maybe you should answer it, it's annoying, isn't it?" Stopping, my husband turned to me and said, "Just ignore her. Are you tired?" Touched by his concern, I smiled and made a fist. "This is nothing compared to the deliveries I used to do. Are you tired?" "I'm fine. I'm sorry for all the trouble up to now," he muttered softly, clearly an apology to me. Following my husband as he started walking again, I laughed, forgetting the current situation. Pretending to talk to myself, I recounted everything to my husband as he walked ahead. I talked about helping with deliveries right after we got married, our son Roy being born, and when Roy brought home his wife, Kelly, saying he wanted to marry her. My husband walked on in silence, but he seemed to be listening. Suddenly stopping, he turned to me and said, "If we take the wider path, it'll be a longer, but smoother journey. The narrower path is a bit rougher but will get us there faster." "I'm taking the narrow path, what about you?" Touched by his concern, I grinned and quickened my pace to catch up to him. Then, overtaking him, I said, asking someone who's been crossing mountains for years? "Let's hurry up, Roy must be worried." Continuing together, we soon reached a quiet residential area, where a brand new house could be seen. Finally, we arrived at our destination. After getting my phone back from my husband, I saw a slew of missed calls from Kelly but chose to ignore them to check the time. Just as my husband had said, the journey that was supposed to take over 3 hours was shortened. Thinking of it as the last stretch, I braced myself and we finally reached Roy and Kelly's new home. Roy's car was parked in the garage. Pressing the doorbell, hurried footsteps approached from inside, and the door swung open. Roy, looking pale, welcomed us in first. We were led to the living room sofa to finally relax. Looking around the well-built house while massaging my tired feet, I felt proud. Roy then brought us cold drinks.
"Mom, Dad, I was surprised to hear you walked here all of a sudden. Are you okay?" You must be tired, why don't you stay the night?
Sitting across from us, Roy looked concerned, but my husband sharply replied,
No. We'll leave once we've calmed down. We don't want to stay in a house with such a terrible daughter-in-law.
Hearing this, Roy's eyes widened as he looked for Kelly, who was nowhere to be seen. He hurried upstairs. After a bit of noise from upstairs, Kelly seemed to resign and came down with Roy. Sitting next to him, Kelly wouldn't meet our eyes. Roy asked about the meaning behind my husband's words. My husband, with a bitter face, yelled at Kelly.
All this time, you've been deceiving us. We thought you were a slightly clumsy but charming daughter-in-law, but it turns out you've been doing terrible things to my wife.
Shaking, Kelly kept silent as my husband continued his tirade. Roy tried to intervene and stop my husband, but my husband wouldn't be stopped.
Even when building this house, we admired you for wanting to manage on your own, but to think you were extorting money from my wife.
Roy stopped trying to intervene as my husband's words echoed through the room. I calmed my husband down, asking him to sit, and did the same with Roy. Addressing Kelly without looking at me, I laid bare my feelings.
Kelly, the money issue is fine. I wanted to help you build this house. But your entitled attitude was unacceptable. It made me angry.
Kelly remained silent as I spoke. And Roy looked back and forth between us, confused.
Do you know why I gave you the money even though I didn't have to?
Kelly shook her head.
It's because it would trouble Roy. He didn't want to burden us and planned to manage on his own. If I said the money came from me, wouldn't that make you feel guilty? So I said it was from you, not for your sake.
My stern words finally made Kelly break down and cry. Satisfied that I had said my piece, I sat back down. Roy then asked,
Mom, did you pay for half of this house?
Yes.
And Kelly made you do it?
Yes. Roy, overwhelmed, turned to Kelly.
What have you done? We agreed not to burden our parents, and now this. You said you had enough savings.
My husband added.
This terrible daughter-in-law has been harassing my wife in secret. The mess in the kitchen during Christmas and making us walk today was all on purpose. Kelly.
Roy stood up, angrily denouncing Kelly.
I'm sorry. I was just jealous because you were always looking after your mom and dad, and I felt left out.
Kelly started begging for forgiveness. But my husband was unforgiving.
Why target my wife then? I get attention from Roy too, so why am I left out? That's because...
Probably because of my husband's stern look, despite his age. Kelly might have thought better than to argue back. My husband pressed on.
What about the finances for this house? Why did you only tell my wife and not both of us? Even if you found it hard to tell me, don't you think it's rude to call someone trying to lend you money poor?
Hearing this, Roy looked up sharply at Kelly. Kelly, biting her lip in silence, received a trembling confirmation from Roy.
Kelly, you made my mom give you money and even said that?
With no other option, Kelly nodded tearfully. While Roy collapsed on the sofa, overwhelmed by guilt for not knowing. Kelly, scorned by Roy and yelled at by my husband, kept apologizing. When my husband demanded the money back, Kelly shook her head.
I don't have any savings, please forgive me.
Then, she pulled a box from under the TV stand, showing us a bank book with barely a few dollars left. Seeing this, my husband urged Roy towards divorce.
Exactly. After all the care my mom gave you, to call her a stranger. I'd rather be strangers with such a person.
Kelly clung to Roy, wailing for him not to divorce her. After that, no one could handle Kelly, and Roy drove us to the station. Roy then went straight to the city hall to file for divorce. When discussing the divorce, Kelly's parents, who were decent people, called to apologize sincerely on her behalf and even provided compensation through Roy. It's baffling how such honorable parents ended up with a daughter like that. Kelly, of course, was kicked out of the new house and is now at her parents' house. Despite her pleas, Roy did not budge, and they are still discussing divorce. As for us, we're planning to move out of our old house and into the clean, emptied new home that once belonged to Kelly. Roy offered to live together since the mortgage is still outstanding, and it would be a shame to demolish the newly built house. Initially hesitant, my husband eventually agreed to Roy's persistence. Once settled in Roy's new home, we spent our days leisurely drinking coffee in the living room while he was at work. In this quiet residential area, all you could hear was the chirping of birds. During this peaceful time, I asked my husband how he knew the way so well. "Why did you know the way so well?" He said, "I used to deliver around here back in the day. This place is like my backyard." Watching my proud husband, I couldn't help but laugh. It seems we're in for happy days ahead as a family of 3. In the early afternoon on a weekday, feeling unwell, I brought my daughter back home and noticed something odd upon arrival. There shouldn't have been anyone at home, yet my husband's car was parked outside for some reason. Didn't Dad say he was gonna drive to the ceremony? That day, my husband was supposed to have left early in the morning to attend a relative's wedding by car. Feeling my heartbeat quicken, I said, "Let's just go inside for now," and quietly entered the house. Then, from the bedroom on the second floor, I could hear some noises. With a sinking feeling, I approached the bedroom. The bedroom door was slightly open, allowing me to sneak a peek inside, even though it was dim. When I stealthily looked inside, I was met with an unbelievable scene. "What?" I couldn't help but let out a sound. My daughter also peeks inside from behind me, and then, with a eek, she closes her eyes and steps back. In the bed was my husband. And a familiar woman. The figure of my mother-in-law, my husband's mother. Yes, what was unfolding before me and my daughter was the scene of their infidelity. My husband, who had always been kind to both me and my daughter. The mother-in-law who was easy to talk to and helped with raising our child. Beautiful memories shatter loudly, like fragile glass breaking into pieces.
What? This is disgusting. Absolutely not, horrible. Mom, over here.
My daughter quietly tugged at my hand, urging me to step back from the scene. Tears were welling up in her eyes, seemingly about to cry at the worst sight imaginable. I too was stunned, my mind going blank, unable to move. But how could I forgive these two for such betrayal? I decided to contact someone. My name is Samantha, 45 years old. I live with Ken, who is 5 years younger than me, and our daughter, Madison, a freshman in college. Ken and I met through a friend, and it didn't take long for us to start dating. After about a year, we began living together. Our relationship progressed smoothly, and soon, Ken proposed to me at a restaurant with a beautiful night view, and we decided to get married. The first time I met Ken's parents during the marriage introduction, I thought they seemed very classy and kind. However, what caught my attention was how young Ken's mother, Minnie, appeared. She looked incredibly youthful and beautiful, not matching her age. I married Ken when I was about 25. Usually, parents around this time are about 50 years old. But no matter how you looked at it, Ken's mom didn't seem to be around 50. She was slim and very beautiful. Seeing my confusion, Ken explained from behind, "My parents remarried when I was in middle school. My dad was 49, and my stepmom was 37 then. It was one of those age gap marriages." That made sense to me. When Dad brought Mom home saying he wanted to remarry when I was in 5th grade, I was shocked by her youth and had a mixed feelings. Yeah, it would be surprising to have such a beautiful person as your new mom. Well, but Dad seemed happy, so I was happy too, and now I'm glad she became part of the family, he said with a gentle smile. I had never heard much about Ken's past, so getting to know more about him as we were getting married felt good. Minnie was easy to talk to, perhaps because of her youth. "Did Ken propose properly?" she asked with a grin.
Yes, at a fancy restaurant with a beautiful night view. Wow, that's lovely. And? What do you like about Ken? Well, I guess it's his kindness. Also, he notices little things like if I change my makeup.
Minnie was so easy to talk to that I found myself gushing without realizing. Ah, Ken's got good points, huh, Minnie said, nudging Ken with her elbow. Come on, Mom, stop it. That's embarrassing, Ken said, blushing but looking pleased. Though not related by blood, it was clear the in-laws really got along well. When my husband introduced me to his in-laws, he said this. When Dad first brought Mom over, I was going through puberty, so it was a bit complicated. But more than that, I was happy. I had been lonely since I was a child, without siblings or a mother. But when Mom became part of the family, our home felt brighter. I realized then that you don't have to be blood related to be a real family. That's why I want to build a happy and close family with Samantha, just like Dad and Mom. I want us to become a true family. My husband said that and held my hand. Ken. I felt as if I saw his commitment to our marriage. He had overcome loneliness with his family. I resolved in my heart to cherish Ken and to become a family like his parents. When I introduced Ken to my parents, they quickly became friendly thanks to his inherent brightness. My parents warmly accepted him, and we were blessed by many relatives and friends at our wedding. Soon after, we were blessed with a child. Really? I'm gonna be a dad? Ken was surprised, but beamed with joy at the news of my pregnancy. The in-laws felt the same, truly celebrating my pregnancy. After a while, we found out the sex of the baby, and learned that it was a girl. A girl, huh? I'm gonna be worried all the time. Ken, you're likely to be super protective. Man, if she ever brings home a boyfriend, I might just die of loneliness. If you say that, she might end up hating you. Even before she was born, we would laugh together. Those times were truly happy. Since getting pregnant, he has been working even harder at his job and has been more proactive than ever in helping around the house. Sorry for making you cook dinner after just getting back from work. When my morning sickness was bad, he would even cook after coming home late from work. He says, "What are you talking about? Men can only stand by and watch, so let me at least do this." He also took care of me by bringing a blanket when he thought I might be cold, saying, "Hey, don't chill yourself," and insisting on carrying heavy items. "Give me that bag, I'll carry it." Even when I said, "I'm fine," he would insist, "No, give it here," and always took the initiative to help me. Thanks to my husband, both the baby and I were doing well. One day, I got a call from my mother. "Aren't you planning on coming home for the birth?" I hadn't really thought about it. It's your first birth, so there must be a lot of worries, right? You can come home for a while if you want. Really? Is that okay? Of course. You should lean on us at times like this. Grateful for my mother's kind words, I thanked her and replied, "Thank you. I'll talk to Ken about it." Nowadays, about half of all expectant mothers go back to their parental home before and after giving birth. Honestly, there were many things I didn't know and was anxious about with this being my first birth, so my mother's suggestion was very welcome. I'll discuss it with Ken. After hanging up with my mom and waiting a bit, I brought it up with Ken when he returned from work. My mom called today and asked if I'm considering going back home to give birth. I'm all for it. What do you want to do, Samantha? Well, to be honest, it would be reassuring to have my mom, who has experience in child rearing, around. Yeah, that sounds good. My company doesn't offer paternity leave, and it would be a relief for me too if there's someone reliable near you in case something happens. If you want to go back home, I support it. Thank you. Then it's decided. Ken respected my wishes and was supportive of me going back home. And so, I was able to welcome the birthday without any problems. I named my daughter Madison, hoping she would grow up to value the connections between people and to be kind and considerate. After giving birth, I went back to my parents' house and spent some time there with my parents and daughter. The house will be left empty for a while, but considering my husband is good at household chores, I doubt I'll come back to find the house in a mess after being away for some time. He could manage to cook simple meals by himself, so I didn't have to worry about his brief stint living alone. On weekends, the three of us, Madison, Ken, and I, would live together. "I can change diapers now, I've practiced," he'd say, managing it perfectly as if he'd been practicing at home. Seeing him taking care of me and Madison even when I was not around made me smile naturally. Every day I felt grateful for having married such a wonderful person, both as a husband and as a father. When I returned home after the birth, the house was not at all messy and was kept in a clean state, just as I expected. Moreover, there was a new baby crib that I had wanted, along with a lot of diapers, toys, and clothes for the baby.
What's all this? Did you buy all this?
Heh, pretty good, right? Actually, my dad and mom bought these as a gift for the baby.
Really? That's so kind. I'll send them a thank you message later. Oh, do that. Mom even said cooking might be hard for you after work, so she cooked and brought over a bunch of frozen meals. She's really a worrier, isn't she?
It seems that my mother-in-law had visited several times while I was away.
She is amazing. I have a lot to learn from her. It's just that my mom is too incredible.
He was laughing in amazement. Ken has always been one to heap praise on his mother. From the outside, one might think he's a bit of a mama's boy, as he often talks about his mother. He would say things like, "For her age, Mom is really beautiful," or "The meals Mom makes are out of this world," and at the beginning of our marriage, it bothered me a bit, but he never said I should be like his mother. Above all, Ken is very kind to me, calling me cute and praising my cooking as the best. So, I tried not to dwell on it too much. Thanks to my in-laws and husband, both my daughter and I were able to live comfortably and happily every day. Eventually, my maternity leave ended, and it was time for me to return to work for the first time in a while, leaving my daughter at preschool. However, a week before returning, my boss informed me, "Samantha, I'm sorry, but you've been transferred to a different department starting next week." During my maternity leave, it seems they were short-staffed and hired someone new. I had been told before going on maternity leave that returning to the same department is not guaranteed, so I understand that it can't be helped. Honestly, I'm quite anxious, but living on just Ken's salary is not enough, so becoming a stay-at-home mom is not an option. I'm feeling down, but I have to psyche myself up and give it my all. Then came the first day back. The facilities and atmosphere had changed since I was last at work, and I found myself bewildered. Above all, having been transferred to a different department after such a long break, the work was completely different, and I was struggling just to keep up with everyone every day. I felt deeply how challenging it is to juggle childcare and work. I wonder if I can really manage both work and childcare from now on. As these days continued, I found myself expressing my concerns to Ken. He seemed a bit surprised since I usually don't make such downhearted remarks. "It's okay. You're just confused because of the new job and unfamiliar childcare. It'll settle down eventually." "Cheer up," he said while patting my head, but I remained downcast. Then Ken suggested, "What if we ask my mom for help with childcare?" "Your mom?" "Yeah, my mom. She's never raised children and really wants to be more involved with the baby." "Is that so?"
Yes. She'd be thrilled to spend time with the baby, and it might help you relax a bit, right? Just knowing someone nearby is willing to help can make a big difference. What do you think?
If Minnie is really willing to help, it would be more than I could ask for. Is it really okay to rely on her so much? It's fine. In fact, she'll be happy. Saying this, Ken took out his smartphone and stepped out of the living room. After a while, he came back and gave me a peace sign, indicating she's happy to help. It seems he had already discussed it with Minnie. From then on, Minnie started to visit our house more frequently and, being a stay-at-home mom herself, actively helped with childcare. Some days, I'd come home from work to find that Minnie had cooked dinner or had picked up Madison from preschool. She also said, "Ken and I can watch Madison, so feel free to go back to your parents' house and relax without the child occasionally," and she and Ken's dad would sometimes take Madison out, really spoiling us. With Minnie's full support, we somehow managed to raise our daughter. Time flew by, and Madison turned 17. Becoming a lawyer has been Madison's dream since she was young. To achieve her dream, her goal seems to be attending a prestigious university, and she has been very busy lately with tutoring and extra classes. During this time, we received a wedding invitation from father-in-law's sister's granddaughter, Emily. Emily, huh? It's been a while. Have you met her, Samantha? I met her briefly when we went to your parents' house for Christmas. Right, not much acquaintance there. The whole family is invited, but do you think we can attend that day? I'm fine. I can take a day off work. But I wonder about Madison. Well, it's a crucial time for her. Yeah. Then, maybe I should go alone this time. It's a shame after they invited all of us, but is that okay? It's fine. Everyone will understand. We can't leave Madison at home alone. You're right, thank you. How are you getting to the venue? The wedding venue for Emily seems to be a stylish place with a forest atmosphere, judging from the photos on the invitation. It's a lovely place, but it seems a bit hard to reach by train. Well, I won't be able to drink, but maybe I should drive. That seems like the best idea. Be careful. With my husband's suggestion, prioritizing our daughter, Madison and I will be absent, and only Ken will attend Emily's wedding. On the day of the wedding, Ken was dressed in his suit, his hair perfectly styled.
Wow, Dad, looking sharp. Make sure to send photos from the wedding, okay?
Heh, right? Oh, I'll send them. Keep up with your studies, Madison. Take care. With that, my husband headed off to the wedding venue. A while later, after sending Madison off to school, I went to work. I thought it was going to be just another regular day, but around lunchtime, I got a call from the school saying Madison seems to be feeling very unwell. Worried it might be the flu going around, I left work early in a panic to pick her up. I arrived at the school, put her in the car, and we headed straight to the hospital for a checkup, and fortunately, it wasn't the flu but likely just fatigue from the change of seasons. Both she and I were relieved, and I bought some easy-to-eat porridge and jelly for her before heading home. Once home, I noticed something odd. Ken's car, which shouldn't have been there, was parked in the driveway. Huh? Why is his car here? He was supposed to go by car, wasn't he? And I had seen him off this morning as he got into the car. Could he have forgotten something? But we checked last night that he had the wedding gift in his bag. What else could be so important that he had to come back for? Madison also noticed the car and asked, Huh? Didn't Dad go by car today? Is he home? Tilting her head. Trying not to let my turmoil show, I replied, maybe he ended up taking the train after all. While we both found it strange, we cautiously opened the front door. As we entered, my heart skipped a beat in dread. Lined up next to Ken's shoes were a pair of women's shoes that I had never seen before. It was clear they weren't mine. A terrible suspicion began to swell inside me, and I could feel my heart racing faster than usual. What? Why? Is someone here? Why? We looked at each other. No, it can't be. Madison seemed to share my dread, and we stood there, stunned. Let's go in slowly. Though puzzled, Madison followed my lead, careful to make no noise. And so, we quietly entered the house. Even as we stepped into the living room, there was no sign of anyone. See, Dad's not here after all. I'm going back to my room. When my daughter was about to go back to her room, I called out, wait a minute, want to go up together? I was unable to shake off the uneasy feeling despite her wanting to go up alone. Thus, we went upstairs together. But halfway up, we noticed something amiss. Isn't the light in Mom and Dad's bedroom on? I was sure I had turned off all the lights before heading out this morning. I thought I turned it off. Wait, Mom, do you hear that? Indeed, there was a faint sound, barely audible. It seemed to be coming from our bedroom. I walked ahead, filled with dread, and approached the bedroom. The door was slightly ajar, allowing us to glimpse inside the dimly lit room. Peering in stealthily, we were confronted with an unbelievable scene. What? I couldn't help but let out a sound. My daughter, peeking from behind me, screamed, "No!" Inside, there were my mother-in-law and husband who should have been attending Emily's wedding. Furthermore, anyone could see they were blatantly engaged in an affair, completely naked. Witnessing such a scene, my daughter said ugh and, covering her mouth, started to retch as she backed away.
Why? It's so gross, I can't handle this. This is horrible. Mom, over here.
In a whisper, Madison tried to pull me away from the spot. Tears filled her eyes, about to cry at the horrible sight. I was in the same state. My mind went blank, and I stood there, dazed, unable to move. Madison repeatedly tugged at my hand, calling out, "Mom." How could I have not noticed before? My always kind husband. The husband who perfectly managed household chores and childcare. My beloved husband. As both Madison's father and my spouse, I believed he was the ideal man without a doubt. Madison felt the same way. She respected her gentle father. Today, she even complimented him, saying, "You look cool," as we saw him off together. I regret exposing my daughter to such a horrendous scene. Both Madison and I loved my husband and Minnie. Yet, in an instant, our happiness crumbled. Since the beginning of our marriage, my husband always looked at Minnie with kind eyes. He would frequently invite her over, and she was even visiting our home during my pregnancy. He also excessively praised her. It would be a lie to say I never found it strange. But I believed there was a genuine parent-child love between them, even if they weren't biologically related. I trusted them. But the love between my husband and Minnie was not of a normal parent and child, but as lovers. As I was standing dazed in my daughter's room, she said, "Mom, we can't just stand by. We need to take action." "I have an idea," and she went back towards the bedroom. Then she pulled out her smartphone and started recording a video of the two, caught in the act.
What are you doing filming that?
I tried to stop her in a panic, but Madison insisted, "We have to. We need solid evidence so those two can't deny anything," and continued filming. She seemed disgusted, closing her eyes to avoid the sight but kept recording to gather evidence.
Madison, are you okay?
I was concerned about her since she was feeling unwell earlier, but she said, "I'm fine now, the adrenaline is kicking in." The evidence comes first, seemingly forgetting her ailment. Despite Madison and I whispering among ourselves, the two of them didn't notice at all. They must be so engrossed in each other that they've become oblivious to their surroundings. After a while of capturing evidence, Madison and I began to calm down somewhat. How should we confront them? Just then, from the bedroom, I heard my husband suggestively saying, "Mama, let's take a bath together."
Madison, they're coming out of the bedroom. This is bad.
Madison and I quickly hid in her room. "Ew, he's calling her mama?" "Gross," Madison muttered under her breath. What should we do in this situation? Should we confront my husband and Minnie with the video evidence, threatening to expose them? No, emotions would likely get in the way, and we wouldn't be able to have a rational discussion. Besides, Madison and I alone might not be able to stand up to them. Then, I had a plan. As soon as Minnie and my husband entered the bathroom, I threw all their clothes into the trash can. About 30 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Come in," I beckoned the guests into the living room. Hearing the commotion outside, my husband and Minnie came out of the bathroom, opening the door to the changing area.
Why are you?
Our home's layout has the bathroom adjacent to the living room, separated by a door. In the living room, next to it, were Madison, me, and the father-in-law, along with other relatives all gathered. My husband panicked, trying to cover himself. "What's going on? Why are you dressed like that?" Seeing my smiling face, my husband was startled. "Oh, the wedding ended early, so I was taking a bath, but I forgot to bring a change of clothes." Despite not attending the wedding, you had the nerve to lie about it right in front of those who are there. and it was a lie that got found out almost immediately.
Oh, Ken. You weren't at the wedding, were ya?
No, Sure enough, my husband got called out by his father and stumbled over his words. Your mother is inside too, right? Can you tell her to come out before she catches a cold? I pointed out, and he stumbled again. My mom is, well. Seeing Ken unable to answer anything, his father snapped.
Hey! You, come out too!
Saying this, he pushed Ken and went into the changing room, pulling out his mother by the hand.
No!
Eventually, dragged out forcibly by his father, my mother-in-law also appeared in front of all the relatives, covering her private parts just like Ken. Dad, Grandma, it's gross, so get dressed quickly. My daughter said calmly and threw clothes at them. For a while, the two who had been hiding in the changing room, shivering with lips blue from cold, hurried to put their clothes on. Once dressed, my father-in-law spoke up.
Can you explain to me why the two of you were in there together?
He questioned my husband and my mother-in-law, his face turning red as if it were about to burst into flames. I was feeling unwell, and Ken was just helping me. My mother-in-law started with an excuse that made no sense.
And how do you explain this?
With those words from my father-in-law, all the relatives started to play a video showing Ken and my mother-in-law together. How did you? What is this? When did this happen? Their faces turned pale instantly. In fact, after recording my husband and mother-in-law, I had sent the video to my father-in-law on his way back from the wedding, with a message saying here's the proof. It seems that after seeing the video, my father-in-law shared it with the relatives he was with, telling them, check this out. Thus, like a family gathering, everyone ended up at our house. Normally, my father-in-law is a calm person and doesn't involve others, but he couldn't remain calm after they skipped a family wedding and committed such betrayal.
Can you still say you didn't betray us, that you don't know anything about this?
Such harsh words, unlike my usually gentle father-in-law, filled the house. Following my father-in-law, other relatives also started hurling insults like you have a daughter and yet you do this, unbelievable as a parent, disgusting. And then I said to Ken, let's get a divorce. The divorce was already agreed upon by our daughter. After seeing something so disgusting, I can't stay with Dad and Grandma, they're just too gross, she agreed vehemently with me. Even my father-in-law said, Minnie, let's get a divorce. And Ken, from today onwards, we're no longer father and son. Well, seeing something like that, it's understandable. The word divorce coming from both me and my father-in-law clearly shook my husband and mother-in-law, who, not knowing what else to do, suddenly knelt down.
I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. I won't do it again. Please, forgive me. Please.
No matter how much they begged on their knees, our anger wasn't going to subside. I just said, get out of this house right now. They kept apologizing, but I refused to listen. In the end, my father-in-law grabbed Ken and my mother-in-law by the hands and said, think about Madison. Just leave, now, and threw them out. And then, as if following suit, the relatives dispersed. Samantha, let's talk again sometime, my father-in-law said as he too left the house. Overwhelmed by everything that had happened, my daughter and I just sat down on the floor, exhausted. Mom, are you okay? I'm here for you, she said, patting my shoulder. But despite her brave front, tears were streaming down her face. Madison, I'm okay because I have you. And you have me, Madison. From now on, it's just the two of us, I told her. I felt pathetic for always being the one supported by my daughter, but I resolved to make sure she would not feel lonely from now on. And a few days later, our divorce was finalized. At the same time, my father-in-law and mother-in-law also finalized their divorce. Ken kept apologizing and asking for forgiveness, but I consistently said impossible, and he seemed to have finally given up. With the help of a lawyer, I received alimony from both my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law. The video my daughter had suggested turned out to be really useful. It seems my father-in-law also received alimony from Ken and my ex-mother-in-law, but he wanted me to have all of it. This is yours, not mine. I've already received mine. No, please, take it. I failed as a father and as Minnie's husband. I believe I also had a part in this situation. At least let me do this much for Madison and you, he insisted. Out of respect for his wishes, I accepted it and used it for my daughter's education. Honestly, the thought of financing my daughter's law school by myself was daunting, so I'm truly grateful to my father-in-law. And now, 10 years have passed. Madison has fulfilled her dream and become a lawyer. She's still new to the field but wants to use her knowledge to help those in need. She will face many challenges. But knowing Madison and her strong heart, she's bound to successfully overcome them and become a respectable lawyer. Since the incident, my ex-mother-in-law has been living alone in a shabby apartment. Having been a homemaker for many years, she had no job prospects and ended up working part-time at a grocery store. I don't know if she's managing well, but she must be struggling. As for Ken, it seems his relationship with his stepmom is truly over. After our respective divorces, they hardly met anymore. Perhaps they were only enjoying the thrill of the affair. As for my ex-husband, he has been completely ostracized by my father-in-law and treated like an outcast by the relatives since that day. Moreover, his company never paid well. After paying alimony to my father-in-law and me, he must be living a tight life. He did care deeply for Madison, but she told him, "I never want to see your face again," leaving him in tears. Since then, Madison and my ex-husband have not seen each other. Well, he got what he deserved. My father-in-law and I still keep in touch occasionally. He is also supportive of Madison's future. As for me, since my daughter has now become a working adult, my parenting has taken a back seat. Lately, my hobby has been traveling with my high school friend, Susan, who, just like me, got divorced after her husband had an affair and is now single. We're getting older and I'm done with love, but creating new memories with friends, my daughter, and my father-in-law is something I look forward to.